Hey, 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 I'm Nathaniel Graham,
And I'm Hunter Peterzak.
and welcome to Green Book Live on Sunday.
Woo woo.
Today we have a special treat for you. We will be covering some of the things that we've covered before, as far as the introduction to the text goes, and a lot of new stuff and how it all ties together. It'll be mostly Hunter today.
Can't wait.
Take it away, brother.
Okay, so today on Philosophy for Free, we are going to be covering a good chunk of the intro text with a little bit of freshman text. I just wanted to go into a little more detail about some questions and clarification. So when we're talking about chiropractic defined, we're talking about how chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art. Things natural, system of adjusting segments of the spinal column by hand only for the correction of the cause of disease. Back when DD wrote this, he did it very specifically for an exact reason, being that he wanted to define exactly what chiropractic was and was not. Back when he defined this definition, a lot of different professions were arising, such as different types of surgery, such as different types of modality, religious values. So if we depict the definition, we're depicting three parts of the definition. First part is things natural. Second is by hand only. And third is the cause of disease, right? The correction of the cause of disease. So if we're looking at things natural, right? So the reason DD put this into play is because he's trying to separate out the supernatural. So he's trying to separate out religion. So by saying that, he's saying chiropractic is not a religion. It's not something to believe in. It is a deductive science. When looking into that second action, we're looking at by hand only. So most people think like, oh, he means by hand only, I can't use an activator, or I can't use any modalities. That's not true at all. The reason he said by hand only is because he's relating that to surgical means. So he's going from non-invasive to invasive, and that's exactly what chiropractic is. When it comes down to it, the last thing is coordination of the cause of disease, right? So when we're looking at the coordination of the cause of disease, thank you, Dylan.
Thanks, Dylan.
For the coordination that causes disease, we're looking at more of how that relates to the incoordination from the central nervous system to the nervous system. You little shit.
Eat it.
Anyways, talking about the incoordination from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system. So in 2020, the definition, what the chiropractic definition needs to be stated as, chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art of a non-religious nature, a system of adjusting segments of the spinal column without the use of surgical means for the correction of the incoordination caused by the vertebral subluxation.
That's what they meant.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat this. Thank you, Dylan.
Moving on to axioms.
Axioms. Oh, axons.
Yeah, all good.
Axioms. Cool. So an axion is a self-evident truth, right? It's a proposition that this truth is evident without any further reasoning. It's basically plain and simple. So an example of this would be principle number one, right? So because principle number one is a readily accepted principle, it's not deduced, it can be accepted as an axiom. Another example of an axiom would be principle of time, right? So everyone knows that you can't go forward, like, okay, we're not going to get into that yet. But the general idea is that you can't go in the past and you can't go into the future. You're exactly in this moment. That's what you think right now. We'll go deeper into that a little later.
Google axioms.
Yeah.
You'll get it.
So the reason we brought up axioms first is because now we're going to be talking about how chiropractic is a deductive science, right? So the deductions are based upon the major premise, right? So the major premise is basically saying that life is intelligent. There is an intelligent creator who has created matter, and it tends to the existence and gives to it all that makes it up. So the principle number one is saying a universal intelligence is in all matter and continually gives to it all its actions and properties, thus maintaining an existence. Which basically comes down to the idea that chiropractic is purely based off of self-evident truths, tying that back into how chiropractic, a deductive science, is an axiom. Anything else to add that?
Yeah, basically what he said. It's these are common sense truths. If it seems confusing, it's probably because um, your mind is overcomplicating it. Just slow it down and dig into what an axiom is and what deductive sciences are, and it'll make sense. Super basic, general
And
science. Yeah,
Nate, in 3 words, what is a deductive science?
general to specific. Taking something general, specific.
Beautiful. So now we're moving on to our 3 phases of chiropractic study, right? So you're gonna have 3 phases. You're gonna have the immaterial, you're gonna have the material, and you're gonna have the art. The immaterial is the philosophy, the material is the science, and the art is the arts. It's what we do, or how we do what we do. So starting off with the study of immaterial, right? So philosophy is the study of intelligence, laws, cause, effect, rules, theories, functions, and other abstractions, right? So it's to gain knowledge of certain groups of principles that are underlying the science, which then brings us into the material, which is the science. It's anatomy, histology, and chemistry. And relating this back to to chiropractic, chiropractors need to know a good chunk of information about the material, right? So about science, we need to know the structure of the body. It's our job to study the material in order to better understand the action or the structures and how it functions, right? So this helps us better understand the effect of the cause and will allow us to be able to trace the cause through its effects. That makes sense.
Sounded great.
Okay. So remember, chiropractic is the study of universal life as well as life in the human body. So it's not just organic matter, but also inorganic matter. What principle is that?
Inorganic matter? Well,
Organic.
you're talking about principle 16 is intelligence in both organic and inorganic matter.
There we go.
And principle 19 is organic matter.
So you'll get 16 organic life. You'll get 16 this week on Thursday, and you'll get 18 following week. So tune in. Don't forget
33 Thursdays.
So touching back onto the art, right? So the study of the art. Art is learning how to scientifically and skillfully be able to perform an analysis, palpation, and properly perform the adjustment. This is one of the most important things. So if you haven't been able to pick up the concept, you need science and you need philosophy. You need art. You need all 3. What does this kind of sound like?
A triune?
Oh, wow. What principle is that?
Is that principle 4? Principle 5?
Is that
pretty much in all the principles? Yeah.
So all these skills are required along with mental work. That's the most important. I personally believe that's one of the most important things. Dee touched on it. BJ touched on it. Mental work when it comes to chiropractic is key. We must be able to clear house within ourselves to allow proper focus on our patients. We are energetic beings. And being that, we can push our own energy onto our patient just as our patient can push their own energy onto us. It's important to stay in your heart space and allow for full integration to happen with the patient that is on your table. Basically, meaning leave your shit at the door and be willing and in a happy place. So just like athletes, chiropractic must be practiced, right? So athletes go to practice every day. They continue to work on their skill, build up muscle memory. It's the same concept with chiropractors. Chiropractors must drill daily in palpation, technique, and this will allow for progression to happen, thus getting better at what they do. When we are never done learning. That's kind of the chiropractor's key rule. Always trying to not necessarily understand, but be open to what's willing to come. The study of art is how to restore the governing forces of intelligence to matter when those forces are lacking in diseased tissues of the body and living things. Got anything else to add to those 3?
That sounded great. Yep, we need all 3 for it to be chiropractic. And just remember that our science and art is guided by our philosophy. Taking the premise that the human body is an intelligent, adaptable, self-healing organism, we then allow our science to dig into each area of the human body and discover the truth of that statement, of that premise. And I think that's one of the reasons why HRV has been so exciting, because it's accepted by the other model, and it directly proves how chiropractic will improve adaptability. And it's just totally in line with our philosophy and our art, because our art is what delivers that.
We'll touch on discussion. So moving on, we got right after that is the missing link, right? So we've talked about it before, talked about it again. What is the missing link?
Force. Missing link is force. Dylan gave a great lecture on day 1, but we did not record it, and it was great. It was on the missing link.
He'll be back with that, don't worry. So missing link, force, right? It's called the missing link because it was unrecognized. It was an unrecognized bond between the immaterial and the material until chiropractic came around and discovered force, right? So we touched on last week, you can't just think of something and then physically make it happen. There has to be intelligence, force flowing through, allow you to create that action. So it's a three-part step. Once again, a triad. Wow. So remember that this is not theology. It's the difference between a good chiropractor and a poor chiropractor is that a good chiropractor has an ample supply of abstract principles in their head, and a poor one has few. So kind of a question to make you think about for the discussion topic is, with a lack of abstract thought, would there be a lack of force? Just something to think about.
Cool question.
So touching into subluxation, this is an important one because we're about to talk about nerve cycle, right? So first, before we dive into periphery, center, afferent, efferent nerves, nerve cycle, we have to understand what a subluxation is. And it's kind of awesome today. We got like a little guest speaker from Sinitz, but a subluxation is a condition of a vertebra that's lost its proper juxtaposition with the one above, one below, or both to an extent less than a luxation, which impinges nerves and interferes with transmission of mental impulses.
Dylan just did all the sign language for that.
All the sign language for that. So that can be a mouthful. In my context, based off my reading from the Green Book and from what I've learned from fellow chiropractors who dive deep into the philosophy, is that in a simple text, which we're about to go into a deeper text, you have a misalignment of a vertebra, either above, below, or both, and it's literally causing an impingement of a nerve, which is interfering with transmission from your brain to the periphery, or from periphery back. That's the simplest way I can put it. We're about to go and dive deep into this. There's 4 concepts that make up a vertebral subluxation, right? And it's a loss of juxtaposition of the vertebrae, like below or both. 2 is an occlusion of the neural foramina. 3 is a compromised neural integrity or function. And 4 is the interference of flow or mental impulses. So we've literally, the shortest way we can explain this has already been broken down in this book, and Nate's going to take it from here.
Sweet, thank you. Yeah, that sounded super general. And now we're going into more specifics that are still general. Yeah, totally. Like the word subluxation itself is such a general term, so keep that in mind. So the first component that Hunter mentioned was loss of juxtaposition. And this is all out of Sinitz's book that we mentioned earlier, who just simplifies our philosophy so well in modern day language. So first involves the mechanical disrelationship between the vertebra in question, or vertebrae in question. As you know, form follows function. As chiropractors, we all know this, whether we're philosophically based or not. And this example is no different. So when a vertebra is malpositioned, its functional contribution to the integrity of the spine is lost as well. Again, super basic. You could think of literally any physical structure ever, and a malposition of some of the moving parts will just alter how the entire machine or organism functions. So the second component is the occlusion of a foramen. The foraminal alignment of the spine is dependent upon the proper vertebral interrelationship. Therefore, when the vertebra is malpositioned, the foramina become functionally occluded. This foraminal occlusion is then the second listed component of the vertebral subluxation. So we're just talking about the little foramina that run along your spine, and how moving it will change how they look and how they work. And when there's a malposition, that change is accentuated. Compromise of neural integrity is the third. The foramina of the spine form the corridor for neural coordination. We all see this in anatomy, how our nerves go out the foramina. When the size, shape, or position of the foramina become compromised, the nerves that transverse such openings may be affected. So this is the impingement we're talking about, and there's different ways it can be impinged. Your nervous system can be impinged, and this is one of those ways. Close the foramina, stretching, impingement of nerves. And the last component, this is the big one, interference to the flow of mental impulses. So thus far, what we have covered in the previous 3 steps may be viewed with some degree of accuracy as a simple neuropathy. It is not until the information transmitted via the nervous system is considered that the 4th component is found, interference to the flow of mental impulses. So scientists for generations have put forth a doctrine under the guise of definitive science to describe communicative function within the body. It is still the common practice to elaborate upon the classic theory of nerve membrane polarization, depolarization. We learned that to great extent in our early quarters. Neurophysiologists and physicists, though, agree that this long-held theory holds little scientific validity in explaining the speed of neural function. There is much left unexplained by science. The delays inherent in current neural theory far exceed neurologic reality of known speed of intra-brain communication. This is not to say that these membrane theories hold no validity whatsoever. They simply cannot fully account for brain-body communication at this time. Chiropractors recognize the intelligent process of communication using the term mental impulse. Remember, mental impulse is not considered as part of nerve impulse either, which we will elaborate later on.
Further down the line.
Yes.
So once again, this is out of sentence. It's on page, I believe, 164. This book is amazing. We're not obviously sponsored by it by any means, but it's literally, if you take your 1913 text and you've got like a summarized version of a 2015 text.
I still like the 1913.
Oh, the 1913 is a prior. It's a prereq. But once you read it once or twice and you're like, wow, this is extremely intense. Feel free to go dive over here and understand a little bit better of.
This gives the why behind the why.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what a subluxation is. Now we're going to be talking about center, periphery, efferent, and afferent. All this is going to connect to a nerve cycle, right? So first off, we have our center. Our center is reference to the brain. It's brain and spinal cord, and it's at the center of the organization from which innate intelligence is controlled. So this is our CNS, central nervous system, and that's what we refer to as center. Periphery is the tissue at the end of the efferent nerves called tissue cells, right? And this is the same as PNS or peripheral nervous system. So this is anything that's not your spinal cord or your brain. Periphery, in the sense of the 1913 text, just means away from center. So that makes pretty good deduction from center and periphery. So now we're talking about efferent and afferent nerves. So the nerves that are leading from the center to the periphery, so brain to tissue, are efferent. And this brain to tissue connection is connected through the missing link, that being force. A good way to remember what efferent nerves do is to remember E for exiting, right? So efferent exiting the brain to the periphery. It allows, once again, brain to go away from center. Afferent nerves, the afferent nerves are the nerves leading to the periphery from the center, which are going tissue to brain, right? So a good example of this would be how afferent nerves work, or through an example of pressure, right? You put pressure on your finger. These nerves are going to send a signal back to the center, so periphery to center, to allow you to know that there's pressure happening at your fingertips. A good way to remember this is afferent nerves and A for arrive, right? So they're arriving to the brain. This is all in relationship to center, not periphery. So now that we know center, periphery, afferent, and efferent, how does this all work, right? So the nerve cycle, this is involved in both afferent and efferent nerves. So the afferent and efferent nerves work in a cycle which form a material cycle from and to the brain. The brain communicates with every tissue cell by means of efferent nerves, which are distributed from the center, right? So we have like central nervous system, and we're branching out efferent nerves to the rest of the body. All tissue of the body are in active organization and are in communication with innate intelligence in order to fully be aware of their coordination. This happens through afferent nerves, so periphery, center, right? If there are anything causing a block between the communication of afferent and efferent nerves, it will create a lack of full function within the body, which can lead to dis-ease, and if it goes untreated, will lead to disease, right? So that's why knowing afferent, efferent, periphery, and center is so important, because literally we just went over what a subluxation is, and if there's any impingement or anything that's stopping the transmission of afferent or efferent nerves to or from the periphery or center, it will cause a lack of full function, which will lead to dis-ease within the human body, right? And dis-ease happens in the moment because your body knows how to adapt. Your body is adapting to a certain thought, trauma, or toxin that it's not able to adapt to properly, and it's going to cause a subluxation, right? So in the moment, your body is adapting to what needs to be happening at that time. If it goes untreated over a period of time, it's going to go from a lack of ease within the body to disease, because it's going to have such a lack of full function over such a period of time that you're going to possibly start having atrophy or start developing certain issues that could be addressed if dis-ease was taken care of earlier on. I think Daryl said.
Nailed it. Oh, that was thorough.
Beautiful.
You got it.
Well, we're about to dive into our discussion session of this, so we're going to cut off the recording right now. But Nate, you got anything else to say?
Yep. Just wanted to thank you all for joining in live online or on the recording. Thank you. We got first quarter Brianna here. We got Matt and Dylan.
Showing up.
Yeah. So what we do here is for you guys. We are pumped to be delivering this, and it's just going to keep getting better. Hope you enjoyed today's talk. Make sure you tune in for 33 Thursdays. Those are pretty fun. And yeah, we'll have this posted later tonight on YouTube or Facebook. So check out Phil for Free on Facebook and get the details there.
Beautiful.
So lastly, thank you all for watching
Philosophy for Free.
Yeah.
Boom.